And let's bring this home with some builds, doing some example builds. This shows just how to compare subclasses without any other build feature. So this is not background or ability scores factoring in or your fourth level feat. This is nothing. This is just how I would rank the subclass relative to the base class of the Artificer. But let's get into some actual builds. So sorry, this is kind of small, a lot of stuff to try to fit on the screen. So there's an example build for each of the subclasses. So you can see you get 2 choices of skill proficiencies from your base class. You really want to lean into the ability scores that you're good at and stay away from the things, of course, that you're already getting from your background. So for the Alchemist, I chose Investigation and Sleight of Hand. That's because we're getting Arcana and History from the Sage background that we're choosing. For the Infusions known, Enhanced Defense and Mind Sharpener, because we're going to use some concentration spells to really improve their ability to be good at the support role. And like I said, chosen the Sage background. The background feat that you get from that is Magic Initiate Wizard. But the important thing you want to get from this is Silvery Barbs, right? We're going to lean way into the support role here, and Silvery Barbs is an awesome support spell. And then choosing our ability score bonuses from background, you definitely want that +2 intelligence, and we're going to get a +1 on Constitution. And I have chosen for the species human, so we can get the healer feat to really boost our ability to be a decent healer. And that is a great feat for healing. Our level 4 feat is Fey Touch, so that we could get Bless as the first level spell option. And that's going to be the thing that raises us a lot on the support roll factor. And then, of course, we're going to boost intelligence with that. Now, that also gives us Misty Step as a second level spell that we can cast once per long rest, which is great to have if you get in trouble or you need to reposition on the battlefield. You can see I gave this Alchemist example build an 8 strength, 14 dexterity, 14 constitution, 18 intelligence, 12 wisdom, and 10 charisma. But you can move the points that I put in wisdom and charisma around however you like. For the armor, I chose investigation and arcana as the class proficiencies. For the infusions, armor of magical strength, because it happens sometimes in tier 1. I've seen it a lot more in the later tiers where you need to make a lot of strength saving throws like I mentioned previously. So armor of magical strength is actually decent for the armor. And then definitely enhanced defense to get your armor class up. I chose the criminal background. That can actually be an interesting opportunity for some role play there. How did your criminal turn into an artificer and then turn into an armorer, and now you're a tank? To really lean into the scout role, because I wanted this to be an A rank scout and an A rank tank. That gives you the alert feat, which is actually a decent one to have as a tank. It is important to get into position and run up to the front line as soon as you can during a battle, and this is going to help you do that. That 14 dexterity score is going to give you a +2 on your initiative modifier, and this is going to give you another +2. So that's good. And then for our background ability scores, +2 intelligence, +1 constitution, and I chose dwarf for the species to get that boost to hit points. Now you could go human again here and get tough, which will give you more hit points than the dwarf can, but I didn't want to reuse human. I didn't want to reuse the same species twice in these builds. And then at the 4th level, we're going to get Fey Touched again, but in this case, we're going to get Heroism, so that we have a lot more temporary hit points we could be granting ourselves to help make up the difference to the other tank builds from the tank video that we're not going to have because the Artificer class has a smaller hit point die. We have an 8 strength score, which the Arcane Armor feature allows us to do. It removes the requirement we need for the higher strength scores for heavy armor. Then 14 dexterity, a 16 constitution on this one. Again, try to boost that hit point pool up higher to get closer to the other tanks. And then an 18 intelligence, that's our most important stat. We're attacking with intelligence. All of our spells are based on intelligence. And then a 10 wisdom and 8 charisma. Now, we don't have a lot of ability score points left over. You could put that 10 into charisma or strength. It's not a big deal. The Artillerist example build we have chose Arcana and Investigation for our class skills. We're using the enhanced Arcane Focus to increase our attack rolls. That's going to affect both our Eldritch Cannon and our attack roll based cantrips. So that's good. And then Mind Sharpener, because we're going to have some concentration spells we're going to rely on. And I chose the merchant background for this one, which is going to give us proficiency with animal handling and persuasion. And that was just because we're starting to get low on the different options of backgrounds we could choose from. And I didn't want to repeat a background, but probably Sage is better for you. But I thought it would be fun to lean into the persuasion proficiency we're going to get here and build this one to have a little bit of ability to be a face or contribute as a fate in the face roll for the party. That gives us the lucky feat, which can be pretty interesting, and that can be quite useful on ability checks in social encounters, because a lot of those can come down to 1 or 2 checks, and if you just give yourself advantage on those with lucky, that's going to really improve your chances to have a high roll there. Our background ability scores for the Artillerist, +2 intelligence, +1 constitution. I chose the gnome species for this one. That's going to boost our ability to make saving throws for intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Now, you don't see a lot of those in tier 1. You'll see a few wisdom-based saving throws, and when you have to make them, you're going to have advantage. And the gnome species is what's giving us that, so that's going to help. And at 4th level, we're going to take the Spell Sniper feat. That's going to help us lean into being good at the ranged attacker role, which is also synergizing with that enhanced arcane focus infusion that we've chosen. The Spell Sniper is going to give us the ability to ignore cover with our spell attacks, ranged spell attacks with spells, and maybe talk to your DM and he'll be nice and let you apply that to your Eldritch Cannon as well, although technically, rules as written, it doesn't. It also is going to increase your range with your cantrips or any ranged spell attack you have, as long as it at least has a range of 10 feet. So we're going to leverage that and use the poison cantrip, the poison spray cantrip, to increase our damage. So that's a nice boost there. And then you can see I leaned into the basically the standard ability scores for the Artificer: 8 strength, 14 dex, 14 constitution, 18 intelligence. Really got to have that intelligence up there. And then I just put the points in 10 wisdom and 12 charisma. Like I said, leaning into, well, we got the persuasion proficiency, so why not boost our charisma a little bit and be kind of good at the face roll. And last but not least, the Battlesmith example build, Arcana and History for class proficiencies. We're going to get enhanced defense and enhanced weapon. Got to have both of those. That enhanced weapon is really important so that we can make our attack rolls using our intelligence. And the +1 to attack and damage is really nice as well. And if we're going to be a frontliner, then you really want that +1 boost to AC as well. For the background, I chose Scribe. That gives us investigation and perception, both great skills to have. For the background feat, that gives us the skilled origin feat. And I chose Acrobatics, Sleight of Hand, and Stealth. Again, leaning into the ability to be really good at the scout roll. Acrobatics is nice. If you ever have to break out of a grapple, at least you can have a slightly higher modifier with acrobatics. As far as the background ability scores, +2 intelligence and then +1 dexterity in this case. Now that still gives us the 14 dex and 14 constitution. You really got to have one or the other, and then you just spend the extra ability points to get the other one to 14. As far as species, I chose the Tiefling Thonic version or lineage. And for the 4th level feat, I went ahead and chose Warcaster because we don't have an infusion left over for us to choose Mind Sharpener on this one, but there are spells we want to concentrate on. So I chose Warcaster. There are other feats that have better features that I really wanted to get, but none of those features, like Sentinel would have been a good option, Mage Slayer would have been a good option, but none of those give you the ability to increase your intelligence, and that intelligence is probably the most important thing for us to get. We got to round our intelligence up to 18. That's our attack stat. That's our spellcasting stat. So we really need that to be 18. And then I put the remaining ability score points we had left over, 12 into wisdom, just to boost our wisdom saving throws and wisdom-based skills, and then a 10 in strength. You really could move those around if you want. And here are the results of the builds, or the rankings I would give after all these builds are put together. Now notice this is different than the previous rankings I gave. Those previous rankings were just based on the subclass, not factoring in species, background, or anything else. So now I'm factoring in your species, your background, and the 4th level feat that you've chosen. You see that we were able to get to 39 hit points with that armor. You could get a little higher, 43 if you chose human and went with a tough feat. You can see that the armor came in at a +4 on initiative. That's going to help you get into melee faster and be, on the front line faster to do your job, right? Backliners are counting on you being up there in melee before the enemies go. So a little boost to your initiative is great. And that's coming from the background origin feat. And then you can see that the Artillerist and the Battlesmith both came in with decently high damage per round. That's DPR. That's the amount of damage you'll do on average per round. The way I calculated that is I basically used Treant Monk's, Chris from Treant Monk's channel, kind of just used his methodology for calculating that. And I didn't factor in crits, critical strikes, because that's going to be the same for all of these. So it's not going to have a relative difference. And I just wanted to show the relative level of damage you're going to be able to achieve with these builds. The Alchemist coming in at the least amount of damage, the Armor then at 5.1, both the Artillerist and Battlesmith coming in at 10.1, which is actually decently high damage. Now, it's not the highest you can get in tier 1, but that is pretty decent. And then the last thing I want to call out is that stealth rank for the armor. I give it a 4A. That A stands for advantage. You have permanent advantage from your infiltrator armor model. And keep in mind, you do need to be switching between armor that gives you disadvantage for tanking and armor that does not give you disadvantage, so you have the permanent advantage on that. And that gives you an A rank as a scout. So let's talk about the ranks that these builds ended up with. So you can see that the Alchemist, I gave a B as a healer, and that came in really from both the healing word they get from their subclass and then the origin feat of healer that I took. Between those two things and then the cure wounds spell, they're a B rank healer. They're still missing a few key things that are necessary, key spells that you would need to remove debuffs from your allies, that they don't have access to any of those, and they have no other way to do that. Unlike the Paladin, right? So just as the Paladin's base class, they've got lay on hands. They could be removing poison condition just with their lay on hands, and the Alchemist has nothing like that. And then we have the Alchemist gets an A in the support role, and that's really between their experimental elixirs and the Bless spell that we're getting from the Fey Touched feat that I took at 4th level. Then the armor has a solid A as a tank and an A as scout, and that's because I leaned into that infiltrator armor model where you're going to have that permanent advantage. You do have to switch armor and switch armor model, so you can only really do that switch on a short or long rest. So not ideal, but when you need to, you can do either role decently well. Then the Artillerist, gave them an A for ranged attack damage, and I gave them an A for support. The A rank in support for the Artillerist is from the Eldritch Cannon's Protector mode that's granting all those temporary hit points to allies within 10 feet of it every round. So that is a strong support feature. Artificer do have a few support spells, not a lot of the really important ones, but they do have some support spells. So that all adds up to give them an A in the support category for tier 1. And then lastly, the Battlesmith. I gave them an A as a frontliner. The Battlesmith example came in at a C as a tank. That's because they're not going to really have any taunting features, but between them and their Steel Defender just being on the front lines, blocking more of the battlefield, they could be a C-ranked tank. But I gave them an A as a frontliner. Between them and their Steel Defender, they are both absorbing a lot of damage, blocking a lot of enemies, and dealing decent damage. I gave them a B as a ranged attacker. If you want to be further back, have your character stand further back and just deal range damage, and then the Steel Defender could be on the front line. And then I gave them a B as a scout, and that's just because I got them proficiency with stealth. They've got the 14 dexterity, kind of squeaking in. It's kind of a generous B. They probably more like a B minus, but that's enough to be a B. They could help out with scouting missions just so that the rogue or bard aren't really going in there all the time by themselves. So you can see how these all come together, and really the Artificer, once you factor in all of the features of your subclass, your class, and your background and your species, and then the feats you're choosing, it is not hard to get A rankings in one or more roles. So no, the Artificer is not bad to play. They're a lot of fun. I love them. They're one of my favorite classes. And I hope this helped. I'm sure I got some things wrong. I probably missed some things. Please let me know in the comments, or if you have different ideas or things you just disagree on. And I hope this helps. And that's all I got this time. Thanks for watching.